Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 32 female, am the eldest child in a family of 8. Dad, mom, 2 brothers, 17, 25, and 3 sisters, 29, 27, and 15. Our parents told me I was adopted when I was 10. All my siblings knew I was adopted. But I was never treated any differently, and I had never felt like I wasn't a part of the family. Some years ago, Grandma, Mom's mom, passed away in her sleep very suddenly without a will. As a result, Mom had a lot of trouble with her siblings when it comes to splitting assets. It took us 3 years for everything to settle down, after which Mom told us she would be drawing up a will to prevent the same thing from happening. Mom came home from the lawyers beaming, saying everything's settled. We were like, okay, great. But in her excitement, she started telling us who's getting what. My 29-year-old sister told her she doesn't have to tell because it's awkward, but Mom says she doesn't want any surprises and wants us to know in no uncertain terms as to what we are getting so we don't fight and contest the will because it's final. After she finished rattling off the list, my siblings and I realized that I had been left out of it, so my 25-year-old brother asked what I'm getting. Mom stopped smiling and asked me if that's what I had asked my brother to say. I said no, I didn't. But I too am wondering why I haven't been mentioned. I don't know what happened, but something seemed to snap in her after I said that. She told me I shouldn't be greedy and should be grateful that she raised me. Because who knows where I could be and what I'm doing otherwise. I was hurt and told her that it wasn't really about the money, but leaving me out of her will was clearly hurtful. And if she had really seen me as a child, she wouldn't have left me out and said all those awful things. Mom reiterated that the will's final, then excused herself. I left shortly after, but my 15-year-old sister told me that Mom didn't come out of her room until the next day. I tried to resume things as it were, but her speech and text messages to me had become short and curt, and she no longer calls. We used to call each other regularly. Dad told me I shouldn't have been rude and disrespectful to Mom, that I broke her heart and should apologize. I told him what happened and he said her money was her decision and that I shouldn't have challenged her. I didn't want to argue, so I said nothing. My siblings have been trying to talk to Mom and Dad about this, but it seems to only make them unhappier. Dad accused me of turning my siblings against them. I haven't visited my parents since the incident with my mom. About 3 weeks ago, and we adult kids usually visit every week if nothing comes up. Am I the a-hole for asking about my share of inheritance, which basically challenges my mom's right to her money and assets, and for causing this conflict? Information. Both my parents worked, so I helped out as much as possible. I don't think I did a lot more than I should, mostly watching over my little siblings when parents weren't at home and making sure they stay alive. Thankfully, my siblings are good kids. Well, they were bratty for a few years, who isn't as kids? But they grew up and started doing their own chores. None of us know of a rationale in excluding me. I've been thinking if it's anything I've done, but nothing comes to mind. I've asked my siblings and they don't know either. I can't ask my parents either because it might upset them more. I really have no idea what happened because on the day she went to settle her will, we were still on terrific terms and discussing where to go for dinner. If I was my dad's biological kid, there wasn't a clue. I was adopted at 2 years old. I was told little except that I was given up for adoption by my birth parents. But because they treated me so well, I never did feel like I wasn't their kid, and I didn't feel like I wanted to find out more about my birth parents and things like that beyond a couple of fleeting thoughts. My mom and I were still on terrific terms on the day she went to settle her will, and were very likely to continue to be on good terms had she not been questioned on the estate allocation. It was all very weird and out of the blue. I just hope this blows over soon so everyone can have a peace of mind. I don't really need the money, because I'm doing decently on my own, but this whole thing has been quite damaging. I'm not sure if we can ever be the same again. Not the a-hole OP. Your mom basically told you she doesn't see you as a child, and yet she's the one hurt? I would advise you to distance yourself from her. invite your siblings out more, and make more connections outside of your parents. You have really amazing ones. I'm sure they would support you and understand why you're hurting. I'm really sorry this is happening to you. This is the kind of thing I think is pretty hard to come back from. I think your mom messed up big time, and until she sincerely apologizes and tells you why she didn't include you in her will, there will always be a huge gap in your relationship. Now for some comments. Yeah, it's not the money at all. It's the slap in the face that says, you weren't wanted, you don't count, and you'll never be my child. It's such a betrayal. You're not the a-hole, OP. You should never apologize as you did nothing wrong. Since your relationship with this woman seems to be purely transactional, only respond in kind to what she says and does. I hope you go out and make your own family with people who love you unconditionally. Good luck, OP. Yeah, I agree with everyone else. You did absolutely nothing wrong, OP. Your mother showed her true colors and is only taking it out on you because you and your siblings called her out. She definitely probably did it to look good, even if they treated you perfectly until this. I'm so sorry this happened, but you don't deserve to feel bad. Not one bit. She is the one who should feel bad, but people like that are incapable of empathy in that way. Not the a-hole. Sure, your mom is entitled to split her estate up however she wants, but she started the conversation about the details of the will, not you. And it's pretty normal for you and your brother to ask the obvious question, hey, did you forget to mention her in your will? Your mother is a huge a-hole for going straight to, hey, be grateful we adopted you. That's just cold. And that's an a-hole-ish reason for being unequitable in her will. On a tangent, stories like this are a great reason to talk about inheritance while everyone's still alive. Dealing with it in the aftermath of someone dying is 10 times worse. So hopefully you can all sort this out now. Story 2. This happened a year ago. I had an awful breakup with my ex when I was 24. I had been with him for 7 years. But my parents knew him since he was 12. My parents are divorced, but they both really loved my ex and treated him like a son. When we broke up, I told my parents that they were to cut off contact with my ex, that I don't want him involved in any aspect of my life. And I assumed that my parents stuck to their word because I am their only daughter. I expected them to put up my feelings first above my ex's. I made it very clear the breakup hurt me deeply. Last year, my ex got married 2 months before I did. I found out that my father had attended his wedding. I was furious. When I confronted him, my father said that it's hard to cut off someone he saw grow up and considered family, and that he thought it would be easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I drove home and sent my father a message disinviting him from my wedding. My father begged for forgiveness several times and even cried, but I just couldn't forgive my father. The breakup with my ex was one of the worst things I'd ever gone through, and he knew it. I had my wedding and my stepfather walked me down the aisle instead. My relationship with my father is extremely icy now. My father still apologizes a lot. And I know that not coming to my wedding hurts him deeply. But I feel like he made his choice doing what he did. Am I the a-hole? Edit. My ex was cheating. Not the a-hole, OP. Personally, if someone hurt my child in the way that your ex hurt you, it wouldn't be hard for me to cut them off no matter what I had with them. I would mourn that former relationship for sure, but I would respect my child's wishes and not have them as a part of my life anymore. Your father admitted himself he knew you would be hurt by what he did and he chose to do it. He willingly hurt you. Not inviting him to your wedding was your own way of coping with the hurt. Hopefully soon you find a place in your heart and forgive him. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. It says a lot about how little your father respects you that he thinks the beg for forgiveness later approach was going to fly. If he was invited to the wedding, it means he had stayed in contact with the ex all along, which in my opinion sucks badly of him. You hurt my daughter so much that she lost 15 pounds and I had to drive her to therapy multiple times, but we're still cool. Like what the F? And if you wanted to go to the wedding so bad, he could have at least said something to you about it. If it's so easy to beg for forgiveness, then he should keep begging. Actually, cheating is some sort of abuse. The reasons are: It destroys the self-confidence of the victim. Victims could get paranoid, so it would make other relationships complicated. The cheater spit on the trust of the cheated one. The cheater lies. There is a risk of getting an STI when the cheating was unprotected. So cheating is some kind of psychological abuse. I think OP is not the a-hole. Her father couldn't cut contact with the person he saw growing up, but could betray his daughter who he conceived, cared for, and watched growing up. Solidarity for a cheater of his own daughter is a-hole-ish. That he thought that she would forgive him is dumb for him. Not the a-hole. You made your feelings clear up front. Instead of owning his decision to attend the wedding regardless, your dad chose to intentionally hide it from you until it was too late. Because he figured once the wedding was over, you would have no choice but to get over it. It was a selfish and sneaky thing for him to do, and it sounds like he didn't really care how much it would hurt you until the consequences came. You told him from day one he couldn't have it both ways, and I think it was fair to stick to that by uninviting him from the wedding. However, unless he has a long history of behaving this way, I do hope you will consider giving him the opportunity to make this right someday. I obviously don't know the full context of your relationship with him though, and if you aren't ready to reconnect, that's okay too. Story 3. My husband's primary residence is in Italy. Mine is in the UK. On one of my trips to Italy, his housekeeper told me that the wife of my husband's friend kept trying to visit him while I wasn't there. She said she came over every single day, even though most days he wasn't even home or was working from home, so didn't even say hello to her. We went out together as a group, so I brought it up to her when it was just the two of us and asked her to stop. I told her my husband doesn't like being disturbed while he works, so she should really arrange something instead of just turning up. She waved me off and acted like it was no big deal. I asked her several more times to stop, but she continued to do it the minute I was back in the UK, every single time. In the end, I was so fed up. I contacted her husband and asked him to tell his wife to stop. He wasn't aware this was going on and said he would speak to her. His wife is now angry at me and is claiming I'm implying things about the type of woman she is. She also said I was treating her like her husband's property, and I was pathetic for telling him instead of just admitting she made me insecure. My husband is mostly indifferent, but also told me I had caused chaos in their friendship group as everybody knows what's going on and it's causing a lot of gossip. Am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. Why didn't your husband talk to her about this? Generally, when we want a boundary between a partner and a friend of theirs, it's best to ask our partner to create it. Even if he doesn't care that much, he should be willing to have that conversation with her on your behalf. So without condoning her behavior in any way, it's weird to me that you talked to her and her husband without asking your husband to set a boundary first. Not the a-hole. While your husband should really have been the one to tell her to stop showing up at his home uninvited, it wasn't an unreasonable request on your part. You tried talking to her, she chose not to listen or respect your request, so you went to her husband for help. As far as you implying what type of woman she is, who shows up at a married man's house every single day without being invited, for what reason? Any rumor or gossip about what type of woman she is were brought on by her actions. Your husband isn't worried because he isn't interested in her, so he's indifferent. Hopefully. But the housekeeper and you realize this woman is up to no good. And her husband now sees it as well. He would not have fought with her if he wasn't worried about it. Not the a-hole. No matter what excuses she uses, it is not the norm to repeatedly try to have one-on-one time with a married man without the respective spouses being okay with it. When you asked her to stop, she should have immediately complied. By continuing, even up to the point of angering her husband, shows she lacks respect for boundaries and is definitely up to no good.